Every company can be defined by an industry for the most part, but how is it that yours differentiates from the rest? It's not enough anymore to just tell your clientele that you're different. Somehow you have to prove it to them, but how? We're going to dive in today on someone who took something that is a part of everyday life, improved it, and then set off a chain of events that changed our culture, the world, and history as we know it. Welcome to our show, The Business Behind Small Business. And in every episode, we dive into one area of what you need to build a lasting business. We start our show by peeking behind the curtains of someone else's success and then drill down to how you can apply it to your own business. We are your hosts, Savannah Stone and
Tiffany Ko.
No one gets to $1 million without getting a little dirty. There's a lot of business behind small business, so let's get to it. The history of coffee goes back centuries. There are places in the world where coffee was not just a way of life, it was the core of their people's identity. There's one such culture that would even allow a divorce based on the grounds of poorly made coffee. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? I never want to see his face again. He made me an awful cup.
It's a bad cup of espresso. Bad cup.
Exactly. Yes, you could actually do this. And I can't remember if it was during the Mongolian Empire, or the Ottoman Empire, but it was one of those. That's how ingrained a good cup of coffee was, and not just their culture, but in a lot of places all over the world. Our story today isn't about coffee itself, but how it is drunk every morning and sometimes in the afternoon, completely changing our economy, our generational mindset, and the way we approach business. So on every corner, for the most part, there's a coffee shop. There's also the big names like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels like over the past 30 years, coffee has become a huge part of our way of life in the United States. And saying that, it's also quite curious as to why I have so many different types of coffee, so many different coffee companies, and every coffee shop I've ever been to is always fully packed, regardless of the time of day. I mean, coffee is just coffee, right?
That's very true. No matter what time of the day, there are people in there at 5 p.m. drinking coffee.
Yes, it is. They're always packed. You go to the grocery store and there's like 5 billion different types of coffees. You're like, I don't know which one I want. But, you still pick one and then you're like, oh, I like that one and keep returning to it.
Right.
But why?
There's a lot of competition.
Right. Well, coffee isn't just coffee. And I'm going to explain why. Because I couldn't think of a better example of how to differentiate yourself within an industry than to use coffee, just a basic of everyday life. There's a reason you choose the brew that you do. Why do you go to one coffee shop over another? Why do you choose one company's roast over another? Why do you choose Starbucks over Dunkin' or Dunkin' over Starbucks? Why, right? Clearly, this has less to do with the coffee and more to do with the experience. What would you say that your experience, or rather your need for an experience, is rooted in? And there's just one person who is the root of all of this. And his name was Alfred Peet. Alfred Peet was born on March 10th, 1920 with coffee in his blood. His father owned B. Corn and Company, which sold coffee, tea, and spices in Alkmaar, Netherlands. As a young boy, his job was to care for the roasting and grinding machinery at his father's coffee company. Caring for this machinery likely gave him self-purpose. Although some people say that he was dyslexic or had some form of a learning disability, I did find that it was noted that he was a very rebellious boy and he did not like school at all. Working side by side with his father grew a passion within him for the coffee and tea trade. And the methodology of cleaning the grinding machinery also gave him a sense of calm. Anyway, his father had hoped he would go to college and have an illustrious career in anything but. coffee.
Oh, so his
However,
father
Alfred,
didn't want him to go into coffee, not the family
no,
business?
no,
Okay.
no. His father wanted him to. It's not that he was like, "Oh, this is a terrible business for you to be in." It was more like, "Why would you do that? Just go to college and like, I don't know, be an engineer or something like that."
Wow.
He just didn't see his coffee company as being something huge and something to aspire to be a part of. Do
Right.
you know what I
And of
mean?
course, this is pre-Starbucks, so there was
Well
no
before
stamp
Starbucks.
yet. Yeah, there's no
This
stamp
is
in the industry
this is
as
like
yeah.
World War One, pre World War One into
Hmm.
World War One. So and then in between one and two.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So Alfred decided to forego college and he moved to London to pursue his passion. In the 1930s, he cut his teeth apprenticing at Twinings,
The
which
tea company?
the tea company.
Yeah. Love
Yeah.
Twinings.
So,
Okay.
I mean, his father was dealing in spice, tea, coffee. So his expertise was in all of those things.
Mm.
And tea comes in tea leaves. So the coffee grinding and the machinery that he was working on wasn't just for coffee. There was one separate for coffee. There was one separate for
Yeah, makes
spices.
sense.
Yeah. So
Ah, now I know why they call it. Is it Pete's Coffee and Tea? I think they always put Pete's Coffee and Loose Tea or something, right? In the name of
exactly
the actual store. So,
uh,
okay. I was wondering why they always stuck to like
the
advertising
tea.
tea. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm also going to get to that part. So, unfortunately, soon thereafter, World War II began. A lot of Dutch people were forced into labor, forced into forced labor in Germany. Alfred did try to dodge the draft. So, the way that they would do it was that if wherever you were coming from, so like he came from the Netherlands, he moved to London, he was supposed to register himself in the city office, and he didn't. So they weren't able to quote unquote find him as a citizen of the Netherlands. However, he was caught on the street and was sent to work in a German factory. It was something that he really it went completely against who he was to be working in this German factory, this Nazi factory.
Mm.
Pete was a hard worker and it was something completely a part of his fabric. And while there, he would hyper focus on making things and putting things together. So this kind of goes back to the whole learning disability. It's quite possible he had ADHD of some form or was neurodivergent in some way because, some people knew that there was something, but they obviously didn't have the testing mechanisms that they have now.
Okay.
But in any case, he really excelled. And it wasn't that he was excelling because he wanted to be an excellent worker. It was that he would get hyper focused and work really well. It was funny that I found this quote, but he worked so well, so much so that other workers would say to him, and I quote, "Please slow down. You are working for the enemy." There was a time in which the laborers were allowed a few weeks of leave. And so he went home to Alkmaar. And while he was there, he hid in the attic of his family's shed. And, when they came back to get him, the family was like, "I don't know where he is." And he remained there until the war was over.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like I said, it went completely against all of his core to be working for the Nazis, and he was not going to have any part of it anymore. So, after the war, Alfred went on to work for a few more companies. And before heading to the States, he worked in New Zealand. So, the last place he went to before the US was New Zealand. And although it was satisfying work, he did find the place to be a little bit boring. And so, he decided that he was going to come to America. Now, if he had come to the U.S. after the World War, like most people did from Europe, he would have ended up in New York. Ellis Island was where everybody was just kind of funneling through. Um, but because he was coming from New Zealand, he landed in San Francisco. Alfred's time in the U.S. seemed to be a form of a case study for him. Having worked since he was a kid as a connoisseur and crafter of single origin coffee, he was shocked, completely guffawed at the grade of coffee that Americans were drinking. It was total trash.
I bet.
So he came to the richest country in the world drinking the lousiest coffee, which is almost a direct quote of his. For him, coffee should be roasted just until it's dark and not a second more, which I think is funny. Side note, that craft coffee today also holds that belief, but like we're talking almost 100 years ago is when he came up with this, not came up with it, but introduced it. Like this was
Oh,
something that he
okay.
had been doing for years. It should be
Okay.
one form of roast, whereas unnamed, very inexpensive coffee companies, I don't want to throw anyone out there and get people mad at me, but I think you know who I'm talking about. Those that come in tin cans, they're usually bits and bobs of roasts. And honestly, it was probably around the 40s, 50s when coffee companies were like, well, if we burn them into a dark roast, and because there's no such thing as a dark roast, if you didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
If we burn it to a dark roast, all of it will taste burnt and everyone's coffee will be the same.
Way to normalize like burnt coffee.
Right. You know, if you get cuz I mean, I happen to know this about coffee because I love coffee, but also all coffee comes in the same, it comes in different ways in which you have to roast them. So, you know, there are some that you have to roast a long period of time and some that you roast for a short period of time. And that's why Americans are like, we can't generalize that and put it in a factory and make it all the same. So why don't we just burn them all and we'll start selling it as bold roast or dark roast or espresso roast. So there you go.
And now
Anyway,
we know how we're here today. Okay.
right, right. So for him, the beans from Indonesia were where he thought that the best beans came from, and this coffee was bitter, well over roasted, and tasted like ash, just like I said. So he decided if he was going to get a good cup of coffee, he was going to have to make it himself. So from 1955 to 1966, he worked various jobs and was able to save up enough money to open up his own place. In
Ah,
1966, on the corner of Vine Street and Walnut Street in Berkeley, California, Alfred opened up his first shop, Peet's Coffee, Tea, and Spices.
wow. So it's California. I think a lot of people are, I think the myth is that it was Seattle, right? Because I think they get him confused with Starbucks.
I'm going to get to that. So, in the San Francisco Bay Area, there was a large Italian American community of which had a great appreciation for dark roast, which, of course, they do. I mean, this is something that they
Yeah.
brought over from Italy. And remember when I said about some beans you roast a lot and some you
Hmm.
don't? And in Italy, in the area in which they were getting their, or in the way in which they were getting their beans,
Yeah.
you did have to roast them a little bit longer and it was bold and it was really good. So you only drank it in the morning
Hmm.
and at night, not in between. Something I've heard, never been to Italy, but I've heard that if you ask for a cappuccino in the afternoon, people are like, what is wrong with you? If you
You
only
must
drink,
be American.
you must be an American. You only drink that in the morning.
Yeah.
So to them, their focus was on where Italians drink their espresso and everyone else was a commodity. So these coffee roasters were really only focused on the Italian American community. They didn't really care about anybody else. Um, he was not just a coffee man, but as a businessman, he knew he was going to have to bring something else to the table for these people to buy his coffee.
Hmm.
He not only wanted people to taste the coffee, he wanted them to be fascinated by the coffee and experience the coffee, much like people do with wine, because that was the foundation in which he understood coffee. And he was like, why is it only saved for us in the wholesale market? Why can't people in the retail market experience it in the same way we do?
Right.
So he said, and this is something we know now, but 100 years ago people didn't know that there's a bottom note, that there's a medium note, and that there's a bouquet. You know, when you buy your bag
Yes.
of coffee, it says
Hmm.
hints of caramel and almond and
Right.
blueberry or citrus or whatever it is. So anyway, he knew he couldn't control how people drank the coffee, but in how he presented it, that would be the control of their experience. That was how he could control it.
Hmm.
So Alfred had a keen eye for detail, and his it didn't take long for Pete's to become a hippie hangout. UCLA Berkeley was just down the road. I mean, think about it. This is in the 60s.
Yes.
So like for hippies, coffee was like the thing, the beatniks, right?
I'm sure it
He-
was.
yeah. So people from the old world. And here, he was in this modern location with knowledge and facilities that made people say, oh, wow, this is so much more than just coffee. His shop became such an iconic place that his fans would lovingly call themselves Peetniks. Yeah. So in 1970, three men, Zev Siegel, Gordon Belcher, and Jerry Baldwin, who had heard about this infamous Peets, decided that they wanted to meet Pete because they themselves were Peetniks and they were huge fans of his. So
I can't believe they kind of considered this guy Albert Pete, right? Albert, like to be some kind of rebel that he would be infamous for his coffee.
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Wow. Okay.
But like if you think about it, this was revolutionary because prior to that, all of our coffees since the colonial days had like bits of bark, chicory. That's why you buy that the chicory coffee had bits and bobs of this and that and the other, and it was all burnt. And so people only knew one kind of coffee. And it was an afterthought for most people in the US
Hmm.
prior to that. We were still tea drinkers, really, which is shocking, I know. But we were really more tea drinkers or just nothing at all because we had to hurry up and get to work and then hurry up and get home. And, we were drinking lots of stuff, but it wasn't really coffee that we were like, "Oh, I'm going to savor this." So what Alfred Pete had done was created a culture around, I'm going to savor this. And that was revolutionary. Slow down. So these three gentlemen had an idea to start a quality coffee shop in Seattle, and they had hoped that Pete would mentor them in the art of roasting and serving coffee. Now, Pete had been approached that way before and saw this as an opportunity to share his vast knowledge and then put a bit of himself out there into the world. These four men grew very close, and Alfred saw them over time, not so much as pupils, but as the sons he never had, because he never married, he didn't have any children, and these men were very young. They had recently graduated from college, so for him, big age difference. Anyway, after the three men learned the art of coffee, they returned it to Seattle and began their business. They bought their beans exclusively from Alfred, and later Alfred went to Seattle to continue consulting and advising them. These four men respected each other immensely and appreciated each other's criticisms. By 1984, Siegel had dropped out and Baldwin and Bowker had continued on. By now, they had named their coffee shop in honor of a character in Moby Dick, Starbucks. And the two men offered to buy Alfred's beloved original Pete's location along with three other stores, so it would be four Pete's stores in total. Pete was honored to sell and yet a bit wistful at the same time. Baldwin's connection with the Pete's brand was had really deepened. Like Baldwin was completely absorbed into Pete's more so than into Starbucks. And so Baldwin's connection was so deep that he eventually left Starbucks in 1987 to continue focusing on these four Peet stores. Baldwin and the Starbucks' new owner, Howard Schultz, agreed to a non-compete agreement in the Bay Area. I don't know if it's still, I don't think that it still stands. Maybe it does. But essentially what it
Wow.
meant is that Starbucks can grow wherever it wants to grow, but just not in the Bay Area. You can't be here. And in 2012, Peet's Coffee and Tea was sold for almost $1 billion, but not to Starbucks. Some say that Starbucks might not have been interested in acquiring Peet's because it would have added 200 stores that Starbucks did not want. They didn't want
Or
to grow.
need, probably.
Yeah, they were like, that's just way too much too quickly. And that Peet's was a lesser well-known brand than Starbucks at this point. But others say that Starbucks and Peet's have just different company cultures. Starbucks uses
That's true.
marketing to make their customers feel elite, while
Hmm.
Peet's is seen as more authentic.
Yeah.
Either way, Alfred took something as simple as coffee and interwove it into a fabric of our culture. He made people feel things about coffee they'd likely never had or never thought they would feel. By doing this, he differentiated his product and built a brand that went on to become bigger and better. And he branded himself as the godfather of the modern coffee roaster and the modern coffee shop
Well, he did predate Starbucks here in America, and he did
by
help
a whole
have a
lot of
helping
years.
hand in that
Yeah.
creation. So it's kind of nice to know that these two, I guess you can call them rival stores, kind of had an intertwining like origin story where everybody
Yes.
was friends and it was a friendly competition.
Always had been, always has been.
Yeah.
And also, it's probably also important to know that the gentleman that started Starbucks although they loved the coffee and they loved the idea of coffee, they did not come from the same place that Alfred did.
Right.
Alfred only wanted people to experience and find joy in coffee, whereas Starbucks wanted to become a $1 billion brand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Different motivations.
right.
Right.
And to this day, you can still feel it, right? And also, I do find it funny that, again, this had none of the original owners involved in this decision of Starbucks. It was the newest owner that made this decision to talk about full circle. Go back to, hey, if we roast everything at the same level, if you burn it, no one will know the difference, which is why Starbucks coffee tastes burnt.
Now we know.
Sorry, Alfred, all of what you did. The Americans were like, this has been a great experience over the past 100 years. Now we're going to burn everything and make it taste like crap again. Thanks, man.
Coming full circle, right? But I mean, that was the one complaint you hear about all the time over these years. So it's kind of cool to know where it came from, because people always complain, well, it tastes like burnt coffee. I feel like it even tastes like burnt coffee. I'm not a huge coffee connoisseur by any means, but even I'm kind of like, it just tastes burnt all the time. Like, why do people like this? And I guess that's also why people like the coffee spin-offs, like the lattes and everything that has lots of sugar and cream and stuff in it to kind of, cover that burnt taste. But some people, I think it's a acquired taste, because some people really do enjoy that coffee taste, right? So to each their own.
Well, it was also a marketing strategy. There's so much more that you can go into with this. And I will say that I was inspired with this story by watching The Food That Made America. It was an episode between Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. And unfortunately, it's a bit of a marketing strategy as well, that if you burn it enough, people are going to want to put milk and sugar and flavor and all this other stuff, which costs a whole lot less than the coffee. So you use less coffee. Mm-hmm. And now if a person had a really good cup of coffee and they had 8 ounces of it, maybe that would cost the retailer, wholesale, maybe $2. But if it's crappy and now they can only handle like 2 ounces, now it's only 50 cents. I didn't do the math, but
this is all intentional. That's what you're saying.
All intentional.
It's all intentional, part of trying to differentiate themselves in the market, which is an odd way to go about it. But, the proof is in the pudding, because clearly Starbucks has expanded. Although this is a timely discussion, being the fact the latest, big breaking news is Starbucks owner has now, or CEO of Starbucks has just undergone a very dramatic change.
Right.
So, yes.
Right. But, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, because I think it's very interesting how Starbucks was like, we are going to pull back the cost of the customer experience and make the customer think they're getting an even more exclusive, better, expensive, richer experience, but it's going to cost us even less. That's genius. So
it is, but it all goes back to look how much of an impact your customer experience has, right? You're actually talking about there's a return on investment here. Like you're actually decreasing costs, but you're doing that because you're able to increase the experience in a certain direction, which is genius. And it's great for us in small business, because most of us have a shoestring budget that we're working on, or certainly not the budget the size of Starbucks. I'm sure they have a lot of smart people,
right?
Yeah,
like they still have to start somewhere. It was when they made that decision that things started to rocket for them, because it wasn't before that. And that's when, like, I know we're not talking about Dunkin' Donuts, and this isn't really supposed to be about coffee, but that was where Dunkin' Donuts was like, holy crap, what are we going to do? Because here's Starbucks, the return on investment is insane, and we're over here making cups of coffee. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was the guy at Dunkin' Donuts was like, how can I capitalize the way they have? Which I think is a question all business owners can ask.
Yes.
How can I capitalize on the customer experience without going broke?
And that's true. And that's what we're going to talk about. Quick side note, though. Most people don't know that Dunkin' is actually a coffee company. They all think it's a donut company. Right. And they actually invest a lot of time and effort in their coffee, which I actually prefer. Okay. Don't cancel me for this, for saying that.
Coffee as well.
I
Yeah.
prefer Peets and Dunkins, or
Yeah.
probably more Dunkins than anything else. But
Yep.
anyways,
I agree.
getting back to our topic for today, which is about how do you actually create the customer experience if you're on a shoestring budget, or if, let's say, you have a moderate budget. You've been in business for a few years and you're trying to figure out how to grow to the next level. At some point, you will take a real hard look at your customer experience.
Mhm.
And if you're just starting out, being able to tailor your customer experience in a way that costs you very little gets you a lot of return, which is why
Right.
this is such a fun topic to talk about.
My gosh. And I think this is very timely as well, because it could be that you've been in business for a long time, and this is something that I've thought about. But and if you've been in the business for over 10 years or over, you've already seen generational changes and cultural changes, and maybe you're not as engaged with your customer as you used to be, and all these other people have entered into your industry that are doing it better than you. So now you're like, oh crap, what do I have to do to get back my edge?
Well, yes, people are always going to find the same waiting pool you're in.
Yeah.
No matter how long you've been in there. And if anything, you almost
Mhm.
want to keep on your toes, because the longer you've been in the industry, it's a little bit easier for you to feel a little bit more softer and laid back because
Mhm.
you feel safe.
Mhm.
But in business, there's always going to be competitors coming into your space. So
Right.
customer experience is one way to really stand out, as we see with today's story. So,
Right.
being the fact that how the experience of your brand can really make or break your success, I think it's good that today we'll probably talk about, I just kind of narrowed it down to 5 practical ways. Not that there isn't more, but
Mhm.
given this some thought, feeling like 5 ways where you can do this even on a shoestring budget. And it could be kind of surprising what the return will be without you having to spend a bunch
A lot
load
of
of
money.
money.
Yeah.
So first up, let's talk about what we can call the invisible touch points.
Mhm.
So these are really what is seemingly minor interactions with customers that may have a huge effect, positive effect on your brand, that even though sometimes it feels like it goes unnoticed, but there's a perception that you're kind of building there.
Mhm.
And it doesn't take a whole lot of money to do this. It just takes a little thoughtfulness to
Mhm.
be able to kind of create those little touch points, like the way, for example, Zappos did. So we all know about Zappos and how they have this
Yep.
amazing customer service. I
Mhm.
mean, books have been written on it.
Oh yeah.
So we're all very
I mean, we've
familiar with
also
that.
talked about it in the past.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
But they've been just kind of the epitome of what great customer service is. And
Mhm.
something small and minute, like you would consider pretty minute, that they did was, they once upgraded a customer's late night order to overnight shipping for free. And this created such a delightful surprise for the customer that, this is what I mean by invisible touch points that can have such a lasting impression. It probably didn't cost them very much to do that, being the fact that I would assume they probably, paid in bulk for all overnight shipping anyways, right? But just think about the delight in those customers. And then these days, I doubt back then there was reviews, but these days, those little delights would equate to basically 5-star reviews, which
Yep.
again has a huge reward, as we know
Yeah.
now, especially with your digital presence in the market. Now, other things you can do is also little simple things like personalize some kind of follow-up email, handwrite a thank you note, handwrite a little note in your packaging, right? Like those tiny little touches that takes you no more than like 2 seconds to do is, again, one of those invisible touch points that can go a long, long way. One thing that I've always appreciated, I've seen other people do this, I do it myself, is especially if I'm networking or I'm talking to somebody, I want to make sure that I always pick up a couple of nuggets in my mind of specific things we talked about in a conversation, so that when I do a follow-up email or I do a check-in email
Oh
later
yeah.
on, it doesn't seem like it's just kind of bland and templated. There's something in there that's very specific to what we said.
Mhm.
And same thing with customers. If you have maybe the customer interacting with your customer service agent, if that customer service agent can reply with something kind of personalized to the conversation, it just makes it feel that much closer and better and adds value to the entire customer experience.
Right.
Now, if you're somebody who's been in business for a while, I mean, one really easy way to kind of keep these kind of follow-ups personalized is really investing in a CRM software.
Mhm.
So whether
Mhm.
it's a HubSpot,
Mhm.
ActiveCampaign, any of those, to really help kind of automate this. And so that you can, one, remember when to send out communication. But
Mhm.
oftentimes these kind of platforms also have built in ways for you to personalize every communication, so that whether or not you send them something special. I mean, we've all gotten it before, right?
Of
Emails
course.
where it's like, happy birthday. And you're like, oh, how do you know it's my birthday?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the discount. I use all my discounts on my birthday.
Yeah, me too. That's basically what I do the entire day. I start at Dunkin' and I work my way around. I think Starbucks
Thanks.
does it too. So I just,
A lot
yeah,
of places do it. Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
you feel nice,
yeah,
right? And you
absolutely.
remember the stores that give you those birthday discounts because you kind of look forward to it.
Yep.
Even though like it's not earth-shattering money by any means, right? But it's just a nice gesture that they don't have to do. Or they give you
Right.
something special these days where, I mean, it's a little stalkerish, but of course, you go on any website, they're already kind of logging in what your preferences, and then you get a special offer based on your past purchase or something you
Yep.
clicked on. Those little things are kind of the nice touch points we're talking about here.
It makes you
And
keep
so
coming back.
yeah, so if you have a little money to put in a CRM and kind of automate that, then that also just makes it that much easier for you to have a bigger reach. But otherwise, shoestring budget, you're just starting out, maybe you don't have that many customers. You can always kind of try to spend that 2 seconds doing something a little bit special, like a note or something printed that you can slip into your package or something in your follow-up email. Okay. So then let's rethink of when the customer experience really begins, because a lot of people assume that it begins when the customer actually walks through your door, right? Or clicks on your website. But the thing is, their customer experience has already begun before they even knew that you existed. So, for example, let's talk about Tesla. Now, we've all heard of Teslas. And the thing is, their customer experience starts way before anyone even buys a car, right? So they're already thinking, and I'm sure, Tesla's not the only one to do this. It's like Apple does the same thing, right? They're already carefully curating what the brand image is online and medias, right?
Okay.
Even where their product placement is, what they're creating ads for. We've all seen product placements, especially in, shows and movies and things like that. These are all companies who are thinking about, okay, what is the impression? What is the experience we want our potential customers to have, even before they even were thinking of us? Because there's a lot of people who don't think they'll ever buy a Tesla or even care to buy a Tesla. But if you ask them, what is your customer experience with Tesla? They probably already have one.
Right.
Unknowing to them, but they already do have one. So a lot of these kind of pre-engagement experiences really help shape how customers see you as a business. So think about kind of like ways to be able to kind of reach your customer and start shaping that brand even before they even feel like they need you or are even looking for you. LinkedIn's a great way to do this too, by the way.
Yeah.
LinkedIn social media posts, right? You don't even have to talk about exactly what your services are or what you're doing, but what you put out there and what you're saying is already shaping that brand for them and that idea of what your brand is. Now, the other thing you can do is that, you can also put some effort into encouraging your customers, especially the happy ones, to leave you reviews online, right? And for maybe you or your team to engage in any kind of groups or communities online to kind of share your experience. Like I said, you don't have to talk about what you're good at, but you can also do it in a form of being able to share what you know and help somebody solve a problem online. Now, if you have some money to spend, of course, content marketing is the way to go, right? You can do blogs, videos, podcasts, not that. Yeah, exactly. I can't say anything bad about podcasts, right? But the idea is you're positioning yourself as an expert in the field. And so in your particular field or in a field where, again, people may not be specifically looking for you, but you're already shaping their experience for them. And so this is great in ways of being able to influence how they perceive you before they even know they need to buy from you.
And also, like, if you have a kind of brick and mortar where you're selling any kind of product, let's say you're a clothing store, I'm more than positive there's a local podcaster that you can go on their show, or you could do videos. There's this great clothing store that I follow that is in Dallas, Texas. Don't ask me why I follow her and I buy from her. She has like 2 stores, I think. But she does these awesome videos where she says, and it's like almost every day where she's like, there's a new drop and here's these she'll usually only have like up to 5 new items in the store, but she'd be like, this is a really great new item. This is a really good, we just got this one in or whatever. And it makes me excited. And like I said, random, I'm nowhere near Dallas, Texas. I can't even tell you how I found her. I'm sure she was one of those, how you get to the end of all of your people that you follow and it says here, these are some people who That's
Yeah.
how I found her. But I love the content because it's something she's already made. I already know what kind of clothing to expect from her. I already know what kind of
Right.
experience I'm going to have. And I
Yes.
knew that before I was a client of hers.
Exactly. Right. And that just, again, encourages you closer to hitting that buy button.
Right.
And I think, like, okay, so we can speak to podcasts specifically because obviously we're on one. So we
Right.
know a couple things about this, even though when we first started, we had no clue. But, now how many episodes in, and we know a few things. But I will say that I think the misconception is, one, it is very low cost today due to all the software that's out there. Now, what you're not paying in cost, you're also paying in effort. So, we're not discounting that there's going to be time equals effort. But
Hmm.
if you're talking about hard budget money and you don't have enough, it's pretty low cost for you to start something like a video, a blog, or a podcast.
Hmm.
But the thing I will say is what people put into those are very intentional. It is
Yeah.
not, I'm picking up a mic and randomly speak into it. I have a
Right.
camera, I'm just talking into the camera, or I'm just typing whatever thoughts that come to my mind on
Right.
paper. There is design and intention behind all of this. And I mean, not to get down a rabbit hole of how much like effort Savannah have to put in, like to plan and figure out, well, what is the feel of the podcast? What do we want to talk about? What kind of listeners do we want to attract? What would be
Yeah.
important to them? What value are we going to bring to them? Like there is a lot of planning behind this, but as far as hard dollars going out the door, there's not a lot. It's a lot of thought. It's a lot of
Yeah.
strategy. It takes a lot of software these days. It makes
Oh,
it a
yeah.
lot easier.
Absolutely.
But I just want to make sure that we are being clear as to, yes, this is kind of a low budget technique, but you do have to really
Takes a
be
lot of time.
defined on what your brand, like what is your customer experience you want your customers to have,
Right.
right? So you know how you're designing the platform in which you're pushing this out on.
Right. Well, if a podcast is too much work, which is fine, I understand it. It is a lot of work. Or if you want to be able to do something that's not going to take up so much of your time, like you could always do your status updates in the color theme of your brand.
Yeah.
And to be
Yep.
honest, if you're using Canva will go ahead and
Yes.
create. You
Yeah.
tell it what your
Right.
all of the things that you
Yeah.
want, and anything that you create is good, because that's what I do with my company too. I
Mm-hmm.
have my brand colors, and I have a welcome packet, I have proposals, and whatever it is that I send out to a client that's in a like a PDF form
Sure.
always has the same colors, always has the same look to it. Everything is
Yeah.
is solid, so people know what kind of experience they're going to have if they become a client of mine. Granted, I'm a service company, but I do feel that you could do that with any product as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
There's also, funny enough, another person that I follow. I don't even drink beer, but I love this brewery that's local to where I live. But I'm not a beer drinker. But I love the way that they've marketed themselves. They're one of the words in this brewery is squirrel. And so they use a squirrel in a lot of really funny ways. They have the funniest Instagram posts. But like already that if you go there, you're going to have a great time. It's going to be laid back. It's going to be casual. It's going to be fun.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, that actually brings a good point to the next kind of idea, practical application of what we're talking about today is creating that emotional connection with
Hmm.
your customer. Now, this is something, like you said, you can create on a really small budget
Hmm.
because social media these days don't really cost any money. It just requires your time and effort and
Right.
thoughtfulness around it. But that's what you mean is like you've already been emotionally attached to the brand. From what you see, you can pretty much know what the implied customer experience is. And when you have a brick and mortar, this even goes as far as just kind of how your layout is, what your
Hmm.
vibe and ambiance
Design.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then same thing for like if you are a service-based business. Yes, you don't have a brick and mortar, but you can always do things like have special like customer appreciation nights out or some kind of group event that you've seen other companies do this where you all go to like a baseball game or you
Hmm.
go to some kind of outing. Now, granted, you probably need a little bit more money for you to do this. So this is probably for the business that's been established for a little bit of
Right.
time. But if you don't have that kind of budget, you can always create that customer experience, that emotional connection through
Hmm.
platforms like social media that has almost effectively zero cost, hard cost to you.
Right.
Now, the other thing is if you happen to be a business that you have employees, right? Your employee experience pretty much will also be defined by, your customer experience will be somewhat defined by your employee experience, especially if they're customer facing, right? So, Southwest is a great example of this. Now, I haven't ridden Southwest in the last few years and certainly not after COVID. So, but I assume their brand is still kind of the same. But there was a period of time where I was flying back and forth to Southwest almost every other weekend for a period of time, like half a year. And so I got to know how they work pretty well. And oh my gosh, there's some cheery people that work for Southwest, right? I mean, even one time, I remember a crew, one of the guys belted out in song, which, I mean, mind you, it was really early in the morning, so I was a little annoyed that I was waking up to something like that. But I have to give them a thumbs up that,
Right.
they were doing it out of their own fruition. It wasn't that there was some kind of playbook that they were following, but they feel it's like strong enough about their jobs that they wanted to cheer up the customers, and that's how they did it. So I would, and just always, again, like those kind of things still stick with me today. So I always have a fond memory of Southwest, and I expect very friendly services when I go on their trips.
The same thing could probably be said for Chick-fil-A. Your experience with McDonald's
Chick-fil-A.
versus
Oh my
Chick-fil-A.
gosh.
Yeah.
The most well-mannered young people.
You know exactly what you're going to get when you go there. If you want to be treated well, or you know exactly what you're going to get before you go there. Right. And I know I've brought this show up before because The Bear on Hulu, I think, is definitely like the greatest show about owning a business. I mean, I don't know, maybe I read too much into it, but I watched an episode yesterday where it was a flashback to what The Bear was like when the main character's brother owned it. And there was a lot of yelling, there was a lot of cursing, and there was a lot of there was also camaraderie. All of their clientele were of a certain ilk, and the people that worked there spoke in that same kind of language that attracted that kind of person, and they only sold sandwiches. That's all they sold. And now that the main character has completely revamped it, all of the server, it's much more buttoned up, it's much more professional. No one yells. Well, they do yell, but they yell in the kitchen. But it's 1,000% different from when his brother owned it. Right. And so when you went into, I don't even remember what the name of it was. It was the beefsteak, the beefsteak or something like that. Anyway, when he owned it, you knew that if you went in there, you were going to get a certain kind of blue collar clientele. But if you go into the Bear, you better be well dressed and wear your best and don't say any curse words.
Right. So the customer experience actually defines what kind of customers you are going to attract. There's certain people are going to be attracted to that experience. And that's also what's so great about small business, because everybody has a different experience. So you just, you go with the crowds you feel comfortable with. Right. All that is to say that, having a positive work environment tends to lead to more positive customer experience. Absolutely. And it doesn't cost hard dollars in the beginning for you to create that culture. But if you have a little bit of money because you've been stabilized for a while, certainly you can invest in training and development programs to help enhance your employees' skill set and their experience with your company, which in turn flows down to your customers' experience with them. Right. And so last but not least, we can't go anywhere without talking about reviews these days. So one of the ways to actually craft your customer experience, especially with negative feedback, is to leverage that into something that is more innovative or for positive change. So when customers complain, whether it's out loud on a Google review or to you in person or whatever the case may be, you can turn that around and respond to show that you actually value their feedback. And if you have, a little bit more budget than others, meaning that, you can do more than just replying to those reviews, which I would always recommend. If you have a negative review, to reply professionally and positively. But if you have a little bit more, in your budget, you can always implement systems to have formal feedback loops. So you constantly get feedback from your customers or ex-customers if you happen to make them really mad and they go away somewhere. But you can use that to actually make things even better. Right. So a quick example of that is like Netflix. We all remember Netflix. Yep. They were live stream. They started their streaming channel. It sucked. Everybody hated it. People complained about it because they were like, oh, there's not enough selection here and not enough choices. And so instead of saying, well, you guys don't know what you're talking about, we're Netflix, we know where we want to go, they were like, okay, we're going to take this. And they kind of fuel that into the innovation today, which now you cannot say they don't have enough choices. They've invested a lot of money in original content, which is honestly, I think one of the reasons why Netflix stands out so much against all the other streaming channels, because their original content is very good.
Yes. I agree. It's also more expensive than it used to be, but in my
Yep.
mind, I'm okay with spending twice as much as I did than when I first got it because I feel like my experience is twice as much better.
Yes.
Twice
Yes.
as much better? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I have a few streaming channels to compare against, and I would say that, I mean, there is something about Netflix content that is just different than HBO or Paramount or Disney, right? It's a different feel to it, and it
Yeah.
does stand out. So they did a great job investing in that.
Hmm.
Now they have a big budget, but it's something that we can use
But
to
we
inspire
see it.
ourselves.
But we see it in the
Yes.
content that they create. They are getting better. They're bringing better shows, bringing
Yeah.
better movies. They're doing, you know. So,
Exactly.
and the same can be said for your own. Now, to bring it into like an everyday application, I would say personally, I really like the way MailChimp has these funnels. So templates for funnels, like sales funnels.
Sure.
And so if, let's say, for example, you lost a bunch of clients, and you're like, hang on a second, these people were clients of mine for a long time and now they're gone. Or these people used to come into my shop and I know they haven't moved. Why are they not coming to my shop anymore? You could utilize one of their templates and either send it out as an email or as an SMS and say, hey, we missed you. Where have you been? What happened to your experience? You could either add what do you call it?
So you're
Like,
like soliciting feedback,
you could,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
you could solicit feedback from
Yeah.
them, or you can be like, hey, we don't know why you decided to ghost us, but here's, I don't
Yeah.
know, a percent, X% card on
Sure.
us.
We would love to
Come
have
back.
you back. Yeah. Yep, yeah, and that's also a good place to invest your money into if you have a little bit more on a
Mhm.
budget. And those kind of software platforms like Mailchimp and others that's similar to
Yep.
that also have usually like an entry level subscription that
Yeah.
allows you maybe not a huge volume, but again, if you're a small business with a small budget, like you don't need a huge volume. You just need
Right.
the actual functionality of it. So something that's going to look forward to, solicit that feedback, be able
Hmm.
to capitalize on that, and again, elevate your customer experience.
Right.
Yeah.
We have had quite the show so far, haven't we? I feel like there's still so much to be said.
Yeah,
However,
yeah. And if you feel like we should say more, definitely give us a thumbs up and we'll say more next time.
definitely. Speaking of sayings, there is a saying that goes, put your money where your mouth is. And we're going to drill down a bit further here to connect what we've discussed at a granular level to tangible sources you can take for that next level.
So I just have a couple of books and also a couple other podcasts to recommend. I mean, there
Okay.
are podcasts that are dedicated to really honing in on the customer experience. So we don't always need to hoard all your attention. And we
Right.
would love it that,
I
you
would
take
prefer
something good
it.
away. Yes. So, I mean, as far as books, there is Chip Heath and Dan Heath, which are somewhat well-known authors, and they wrote this book called The Power of Moments. And so this is basically what we were talking about, kind of that invisible touch point and those little moments you can create that has profound impact on your customers. And their book actually goes through how, as a business, you can create
Hmm.
these memorable customer experiences that really stand out for yourself. The other one I thought I love the title of is Hug Your Haters by Jay Bear. So this basically explores how business can use customer complaints as opportunities to actually
That's awesome.
strengthen your customer relationship and actually improve the overall customer experience. So I love
Hmm.
turning that negative into a positive. And then
Okay.
two quick podcasts. One is it's called the Customer Experience Podcast. So I'll give you three guesses what that podcast is about, right?
Hmm.
So it's all about customer experience, and they, interview like experts and give practical advice on how to improve your customer interactions.
Hmm.
And then the other one is called the Experience This podcast. So this is a bit more fun. It shares a lot of like real life stories and like customer experiences. And of course, just like us, actionable takeaways that you can, take and put to use in your business and get a little bit closer to that growth or that success you're looking for. So I love it.
Cool. All right. Well, I have a little bit of this, that, and the other as well to offer up. And I'm going to start with a movie called Caffeinated. This is a movie that came out in 2015, and it tells the story of coffee through the perspectives of people who have dedicated their lives to it, and it includes Alfred Peet. So the movie goes on to show you at every step of the process, the hands that plant the seed, that roast the beans, the crafted drink, and that makes every cup of coffee a story worth telling. Really cool. We're also going to put in the show notes our links of which we used in order to provide this content to you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there are 3 that I am including that go a little bit further into what we're talking about how to measure and how to strategize the customer experience. One is from Zendesk, and there are 2 from HBR. Next, there's also a YouTube video called Best Practices for Developing a Customer Experience Strategy by People Metrics Live. I'm including this because there's a worksheet provided in their show notes that I think is really valuable. So the video, I want to say, is like less than 40 minutes or just less than. But if you're more of a book person, consider reading Measuring Customer Experience: How to Develop and Execute the Most Profitable Customer Experience Strategies by Philip Klaus, or Customer Experience Excellence: The 6 Pillars of Growth by Tim Knight and David Conway. Lastly, these are my recommended strategies for defining and then creating a customer experience. So one, there's the omni-channel experience. This is a marketing, sales, and customer service strategy that levels out kind of the playing field. So this could be web, mobile, social apps, brick and mortar stores. The goal is to make sure that the customer can have the same experience regardless of the platform or the method that they use. So that's one. 2 is the customer journey map. And don't worry, you don't have to write all this down. We'll put this into our show notes as well. Anyway, so there's the customer journey map. This is a visual representation of what the customer's interaction looks like within your company. This includes their goals, their emotions, and their pain points. This can help marketers or your marketing team or yourself predict customer behavior and anticipate their needs, which will later lead to better customer response. So one example I can give to that is in my industry, January is hair on fire in a dumpster going down a river. It is the worst month ever. So I do my best to prepare for that time of year, because January is when end of books need to be closed. Everybody's 1099s. Not everybody's got a fully covered W-9. It's a mess. So what we do is we start the customer experience in September so that it's not a mess in January. And then, as Tiffany had mentioned, empowering your employees. This is a management approach. It gives your employees more autonomy and control over their own work. It can help employees feel more engaged and creative. It can help them make more independent decisions. And when an employee feels more powered, they may be more productive and innovative, which can then improve business outcomes. Lastly, there's understanding your audience. Who are your customers? How can you reach them? What products or service do they need? How would they benefit from your offerings? How much would they be willing to pay? And who are your competitors? So if you could write this stuff down, put it into a spreadsheet, whatever it is, this could be the starting point of you creating the strategy towards your customer experience. Actually, that wasn't last. This is last. There's connect with your customers, but if you connect with your customers, streamlining your processes, and then track what your consumer sentiment is around your brand, because maybe you created a brand that not everybody is going to love. You need to know. I mean, you don't want to be New Coke, right? You don't want to present New Coke and then everyone be like, this is trash. So pay very close attention to what their experience is and talk to them. Just talk to them. So what more can we say about this? Anything else? I feel like we have really covered a lot.
I think we did.
All right, awesome. So please hit those like buttons and the follow buttons and tell all of your friends about us. Everybody, tell your neighbors, tell your friends. Our show is on all of your preferred podcast platforms, social media, and YouTube. We'd love for you to also share our episodes. All of our links are posted below. And until next time, mind the business behind your business, because all great successes start small.